So, I want you to think about the absolute best teacher you have ever had in your entire life. Like the
Mm.
one who just fundamentally changed how you see the world.
Yeah, I think almost everybody has that one specific person who immediately pops into their head.
Right. Now, what if I told you that, well, their mastery of the actual subject matter, like their impeccable grasp of the facts, actually had almost nothing to do with why you learned so much from them?
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right?
Hmm.
Because it basically violates everything we are taught about how education is supposed to work.
Oh, absolutely.
We're conditioned to believe that knowledge is essentially just a commodity.
Right. Whether you are picking up a new coding language or maybe navigating a tricky mentorship at your corporate job or honestly just sitting in a high school history class, you've experienced this standard model. It's basically a transaction.
Exactly, a total transaction.
The person at the front of the room has this like full bucket of information, and you, the student, are just an empty container. They tilt their bucket, they pour out a few facts, and you get filled up.
Yeah, it's neat, it's measurable, and according to the essay we are exploring in today's deep dive, it is a complete illusion.
A total illusion. So we're looking at this essay titled The Real Meaning of Teaching. And our mission today is to kind of tear down that traditional idea of education and explore what genuine instruction actually requires.
Yeah. The author in this essay, they really pull no punches here. They argue that just delivering information is not actually teaching.
Wait, really? Not at all.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong, information transfer does happen. Like, we are transferring information to the listener right now.
Right, right.
But a perfectly polished lecture or, a beautifully designed PowerPoint, that is just content delivery.
Mhm.
If we want to understand what genuine instruction is, we have to recognize the massive gulf between delivering content and making real contact.
Okay, let's unpack this because that difference between, content and contact is really the beating heart of this entire piece. So how are we defining the difference between just knowing a piece of content and actually understanding it?
So content sits entirely on the surface. It's just data. Understanding, on the other hand, well, it requires a collision with reality.
A collision with reality. I like that.
Yeah, the text uses a really great framework for this. So you can memorize the dictionary definition of grief. You can read peer-reviewed psychology papers on the stages of mourning. You possess the content, right?
For facts on paper.
Exactly. But that is fundamentally different from understanding the devastating physical weight of grief when it actually enters your own life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a huge distinction.
Or take courage, right?
Yeah.
You can study the historical mechanics of courage, but you do not actually understand it until your own safety is on the line and you have to, physically exercise it.
It makes me think of reading a Wikipedia summary of a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Because you can memorize the height of the first drop, the exact top speed, the physics of the loop. You have all the data. But reading that page is nothing like actually being strapped into the front car.
Not even close.
It doesn't prepare your nervous system for the feeling of your stomach dropping out as you go over the edge. Like one is a list of facts and the other is an experience that fundamentally alters your state.
And that analogy captures the exact limitation of the whole empty container model. You can fill the container with Wikipedia summaries all day long, but the student remains completely unchanged.
So the content is there, but the person is the same.
Exactly, which brings us to this really radical redefinition in the text. If your primary job as someone leading or instructing isn't to just deliver the summary, your first responsibility is actually to the student's interior state.
Oh, okay. I struggle with this. I really do.
How so?
Well, if I am hired to teach calculus or, if I'm a manager trying to onboard a new employee, my job is to make sure they know the math or the software. If my first responsibility is suddenly their interior state, aren't we just turning teachers into therapists? Like, how do we actually get around to teaching the material?
It's a super fair pushback, but I think it misunderstands how the human brain actually processes new information. This isn't about therapy. This is about biological prerequisites.
Biological prerequisites. Meaning what, exactly?
Think about what happens in the brain when a student feels defensive or distracted, or maybe they were just subtly humiliated by a sharp comment about a question they asked.
Oh, yeah. We've all been in that room.
Right. When an individual feels threatened, socially or intellectually, their amygdala basically hijacks their nervous system.
Yeah.
They enter a contracted self-protective state. And in that specific neurological condition, The higher-order thinking centers of the brain literally bottlenecks.
So they physically cannot absorb the complex concepts you're throwing at them. Like their brain is literally shutting the door.
They cannot expand. I mean, they can fake it, sure.
Right, they just nod along.
Yeah, they can use short-term memory to cram the facts for tomorrow's test and perform competence, but the knowledge doesn't integrate. True learning requires a neurological openness that is physically impossible when a person is bracing for impact.
That makes so much sense.
And the historical great teachers, the ones who really shifted paradigms, they are remembered precisely because of how they bypassed those defenses. The text notes, they made students feel three specific things: seen, invited, and expanded.
Invited, expanded.
Yeah. The subject matter, the calculus, or the software, that was merely the occasion for this encounter. The relationship itself was the actual method.
Okay, so if the real goal is to fundamentally alter a student's interior state, like to take their brain from a defended posture to an expanded one, then we aren't just talking about sharing good ideas.
No, not at all.
Something palpable is happening in that room. Something is physically shifting between those two people, which leads into the text's exploration of transmission. And I have to admit, here's where it gets really interesting, but also where the essay lost me for a second.
Yeah, let's get into it because it is a big concept. The essay looks at various cultural wisdom traditions that recognize this phenomenon way before modern science.
Right.
They all share this belief that a teacher passes on an orientation toward reality itself, not just words. So the Sanskrit tradition calls it Shiktipata, which translates to the descent of energy.
Okay.
Sufi traditions speak of baraka, which is like a spiritual blessing or radiance carried by the teacher. And Zen Buddhism talks about pointing directly at the moon, where the unspoken transmission is the actual teaching.
Okay, hold on. Descent of energy, spiritual radiance. I mean, I have to be brutally honest here.
Go for it.
That sounds like pure mystical fluff to me. Like, if I am sitting in a beige conference room taking a mandatory corporate training seminar on advanced Excel modeling, I do not want my instructor's spiritual radiance. I just want the keyboard shortcuts, you know?
I completely get that reaction.
Is the author just romanticizing a very basic human interaction?
It definitely sounds poetic, but the author is actually pointing to a hard biological reality. These traditions were just naming a neurological mechanism centuries before we had fMRI machines to map it out.
Okay, so what's the science behind the poetry?
Humans are social primates, and we are wired for co-regulation. Our nervous systems do not operate in isolation. Through a process called neuroception, your brain is constantly subconsciously scanning the environment.
Just looking for threats, basically.
Right, and mirroring the internal states of the people around you, especially the person who holds authority or status in the room.
So if the person at the front of the room is anxious, my brain picks up on that and signals that there is a threat, even if I don't consciously know what it is.
Exactly. And conversely, if the teacher is genuinely alive to the material, something entirely different happens. The text calls this contagious presence.
Contagious presence.
Yeah. Imagine a teacher who isn't just reciting a script they memorized 10 years ago. They are truly present, exploring the idea in real time, still fascinated by it themselves.
Like they're discovering it with you.
Yes. Their autonomic nervous system is broadcasting safety and curiosity. Your mirror neurons pick up on that authenticity. Your body relaxes. Those guarded parts of your intelligence just soften. The teacher is transmitting the undeniable living proof that knowing this subject actually matters.
Contagious presence. Wow. It's like the teacher's genuine curiosity gives the student's brain biological permission to be curious too.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
You aren't learning it because it's on the syllabus. You're learning it because this other human being is showing you, with their entire physical being, that this is worth looking at.
And that shared looking is the ignition for real understanding. But, notice the trap here.
What's the trap?
If this process relies on the biological transfer of an internal state, you cannot fake it. You can't just pretend to be fascinated. Your nervous system will betray you to the audience.
Oh, wow. Which means the teacher is completely exposed.
Totally exposed.
Like if they're bored, the students know. If they're insecure, the students know. That completely flips the script on what we think of as the authority of a teacher.
It really does. The essay calls this dynamic a laboratory of mutual becoming.
Mutual becoming. It seems like being a teacher requires a terrifying amount of vulnerability then.
Teaching force is brutal honesty. I mean, if you've ever tried to explain a complex idea to someone who's hanging on your every word, you know exactly what happens.
You realize what you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As you articulate the concept, you suddenly hit the edges of your own understanding. You find yourself thinking, wait, I actually don't know why this variable behaves this way.
Right, you discover where you've just been reciting a comfortable approximation of the truth instead of holding the truth itself.
Yes, and the vulnerability comes from having to admit that out loud in real time.
It makes me think of a broken radio tower.
How do you mean?
Well, imagine someone who has been teaching the exact same subject for 30 years, but has completely stopped learning. They become a pure broadcaster.
Yeah.
They are sending out a signal that is technically 100% accurate. Like, the dates are correct, the formulas are right, but the signal is completely dead. There's no life to it, no contagious presence, because the person sending it is no longer pushing their own boundaries.
A dead signal.
Mhm.
That is a great way to visualize what happens when a teacher stops being a student. The living teacher has to remain open. They must possess the humility to say, I don't know, and mean it not as a failure of their authority, but as an invitation to go find out together. They allow the encounter to change them.
Okay, I buy that. I buy that the teacher has to be vulnerable and risk their authority. But what about the student?
What do you mean?
Well, we usually treat the student's role as just, showing up and taking notes. But if this is really a mutual becoming, the student must be doing some heavy lifting too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The idea that the student is passive is probably one of the most damaging misconceptions in education today. True receptivity is an intensely active, highly disciplined state.
So they have to work for it.
Yeah, to genuinely learn something new, to move from content to contact, the student has to do something incredibly difficult. They have to actively allow themselves to not know.
Okay, but why is that so difficult? I mean, we literally show up to classrooms because we don't know things.
Because not knowing feels deeply dangerous to the human ego.
Really dangerous.
Think about it. Our egos organize themselves around the mental maps we've built of the world. Those maps give us our identity. They give us our sense of safety. So when you encounter a piece of knowledge that contradicts your map, your instinct is to either reject the information entirely or violently cram it into a pre-existing, comfortable mental box.
Oh, I see. We don't want to break the map.
Exactly. To truly open yourself to a new perception requires you to let an old framework break apart so a new one can form.
Wow. And the text describes that moment as a small death of the prior self, right?
It does.
Which sounds super dramatic, but honestly, I think everyone has felt that.
The essay also mentions that genuine learning always carries a faint note of vertigo.
Vertigo. Yes.
You are choosing to stay present with confusion instead of rushing to an easy, premature conclusion. You are actively resisting the reflex to regain your footing by falling back on your old assumptions. That requires immense courage and active discipline.
Vertigo is just the perfect word for it. It's that dizzying, unmoored feeling when a belief you've held for years suddenly gets overturned, and for a second, you just don't know which way is up.
Right. It's totally disorienting.
But if we follow this logic out, so what does this all mean? If both the teacher and the student are engaging in this highly vulnerable process, constantly walking the edges of their understanding and mutually transforming, what is the end game?
The end game.
Yeah. At some point, the student is going to catch up to the teacher's map of the world. What happens then?
Well, the ultimate aim of teaching is to make itself obsolete.
Obsolete.
Yeah. The goal isn't just for the student to acquire more facts. The goal is for the student to be more awake, more capable of honest self-examination, more deeply connected to their own intelligence.
That's a huge shift from the bucket analogy.
Completely. The text points to some of history's greatest teachers to illustrate this. Socrates, the Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, Maria Montessori.
Even the unnamed grandmother, right, the one simply teaching a child how to observe a garden.
Yes. And what binds all those incredibly different figures together,
Mm-hmm.
none of them were trying to build followers, they were building questioners.
Oh, I love that. A follower relies on the leader's map, but a questioner knows how to draw their own.
Exactly. A true teacher is trying to pass on the very capacity for inquiry that made the teacher necessary in the first place. They are modeling how to look clearly, how to think honestly, and how to keep moving toward the truth even when that vertigo sets in.
So they are teaching them how to be their own guide.
Right. Once the student has internalized that ability, once they know how to sit with their own not knowing without panicking, they no longer need the teacher to navigate the dark for them.
The dynamic fundamentally shifts. They don't need the external nervous system to regulate their own anymore. The scaffolding can come down because the building can stand on its own.
The relationship between the two people might last a lifetime, but that core dependency is permanently broken. Teaching, when you strip away all the institutional baggage, is simply one human being saying to another, Through their presence. You already have the tools inside you to understand this world. Let me just show you where they live.
Wow. As we wrap this up, if we zoom out and look at the core of this deep dive, teaching is not instruction. It is not delivering a package of data from a warehouse to a consumer.
No, it's not.
It is an encounter. It is that ancient, incredibly simple gesture of someone who has traveled just a little bit further down the path, turning around, holding out a hand, and saying, "Here, this way. I'll walk with you until you know the terrain yourself." Everything else, like the syllabus, the metrics, the mandatory seminars, it's just scaffolding.
And that encounter relies entirely on one vital element, which is trust. The text makes a really profound distinction here that I think we need to carry with us. We talked about how the student needs to feel safe to experience that vertigo of not knowing. But safety does not mean comfort. It means trust.
Oh, wait. Explain that difference because people use those two words interchangeably all the time.
Yeah, they do. But comfort is polite. Comfort is the absence of friction. It avoids hard questions and protects the ego's existing map.
Right.
Trust, however, is the foundation that allows you to endure the deep discomfort of having your worldview challenged. And if we extrapolate this idea into our modern lives, the implications are honestly staggering. Look at the digital environments we spend most of our time in. The algorithms that run our feeds and curate our content are explicitly designed to optimize for pure comfort.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They relentlessly filter out any perspective that might challenge us, feeding us a steady diet of our own existing opinions.
So we are basically building an entire ecosystem that systematically eliminates the vertigo of true learning.
Yes, we are engineering a world that is incredibly comfortable, but completely devoid of the vulnerability and trust required to actually grow. When we never practice being in that state of not knowing, our capacity for genuine inquiry just atrophies.
That is terrifying, honestly.
It is. So I challenge you, the listener, to examine where you sit in this dynamic, whether you're leading a team, raising a child, or simply trying to learn something new yourself. Are you merely curating comfortable, polite environments? Or are you willing to do the hard, vulnerable work of building the deep trust required to actually shatter the container and make real contact?
That is the ultimate question. Because if we just want comfort, we can stick to the Wikipedia summaries. But if we want to transform, we have to get in the car and feel the drop. Keep that in mind the next time you find yourself with the opportunity to teach or to learn. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.